Hey everyone, and welcome to the All It Takes is a Goal podcast, the best place in the entire world, including all of Canada, to learn how to build new thoughts, new actions, and new results. I'm your host, John Acuff, and today I'm joined by Vanessa Van Edwards. Who's that? I'm so glad you asked. Vanessa Van Edwards is the national bestselling author of Captivate, The Science of Succeeding with People, which has been translated into 17 languages. Over 54 million people have seen her on YouTube and in her viral TED Talk. Her behavioral research lab, Science of People, has been featured in Fast Company, Inc., USA Today, and on CNN, CBS, Entrepreneur Magazine, and so many other outlets. For over a decade, Vanessa has been leading corporate trainings and workshops to audiences around the world, including South by Southwest and MIT. Those are good letters. MIT is good to have in your bio. And at companies including Google, Dove, Microsoft, and Comcast. She's got a brand new book called Cues, Master the Secret Language of Charismatic Communication. And we actually know each other, which is always fun. We both spoke at the World Domination Summit in Portland, Oregon, which is Chris Guillebeau's event. Amazing event. And I think you're going to love this interview. We talk about so many different things, including charisma, how to be more charismatic, what words you're using in emails. Like, we go all over the place. We hear about her personal goals when she was 6 and trying to earn enough money to go to Disneyland and how they figured out how to do something with a movie company. We talk about Tom Brady. We just go all over the place. I think you're going to love the episode. But first, a quick message about the sponsor of today's episode. Today's sponsor is me. I've been really surprised at how many people who listen to this podcast have reached out to me about having me speak at their events. I love that. And here's why. Over the last 13 years, I've had the honor to help hundreds of companies like Nissan, Walmart, Microsoft, and Comedy Central at events around the world. And during that time, I've developed 3 big goals for your event. Number 1, I want to slingshot your audience into the best year they've ever had. Whether I'm opening, closing, or somewhere in the middle of the event, I want to launch everyone out of that room with actionable, memorable things that they can apply to their work and lives immediately. Number 2, my second goal, I want the sound team engaged and laughing. The sound team has heard it all. They have. And if I can make them laugh and learn along the way, the audience is going to absolutely love the keynote. And number 3, my third goal, I want you to get text messages during the keynote. My favorite sentence to hear from you after I speak is, John, my phone was blowing up during your keynote. I'm there to make you look like a rock star, not me. If your boss texts you during my speech and compliments you on how well the event is going, then I know I've done my job. Whether it's virtual or live, 10,000 people in an arena, or 15 sales team members on WebEx or Zoom or Microsoft Teams, I'd love to help you with your next event. Fill out the quick form at acuff.me/speaking to check my availability. That's Acuff, ACUFF.me/speaking. All right, let's jump into the interview with Vanessa Van Edwards. Vanessa, I'm so glad that we get to connect again. It's been years and years since we've been in the same space, but we did a video on your YouTube channel and now you're on my podcast. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh my goodness. Thanks so much for having me. I wish we could virtually hug. So we'll send it through the airwaves.
And you live in Austin, right? You're in Texas?
I do. The land of tacos and sunshine. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Southern Nashville is how I think of Austin, because we have a lot in common. You have more tacos, but I think we're close to tied on musicians.
Close to tied on musicians and close to tied on barbecue. So we can agree on that.
Oh, we can. So I'd love to jump right in. You've got a brand new book, Cues, Small Signals, Incredible Impact, Master the Secret Language of Charismatic Communication. There's 1,000 topics people can write books about. Why did you narrow to this one? And what's that process like for you as a writer? What's the kind of narrowing down to, you know what, I want to do a whole book on this idea?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Okay. So let's dive into it. I like to joke that I'm a recovering awkward person. And I'm one of those folks who just social information never came natural to me. So growing up, I had a lot of social anxiety and I also get very in my own head. I don't know if this is you, John, but I get in my own head. I overthink everything I say. I'm that person. I lay in bed at night and replay every conversation I had. And I learned as I started picking up everything I could get my hands on communication, a lot of the best communication books are written by extroverts. So even like the classic Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, amazing book, but it's written from an extrovert's perspective. And I wondered, is there a way to learn how to be charismatic without having to be extroverted? Is there a way to be heard without being loud? Is there a way to be charismatic in my own flavor? And so I began this deep dive for myself to scratch this itch to see, is there a different kind of charisma? And I found that not only are there different flavors of charisma, so we don't all have to be the extrovert, bubbly life of the party. There's also the quiet, powerful, contemplative introvert. There's the compassionate, empathetic healer. There are so many flavors that actually we want those flavors. And the more you can figure out your unique flavor, the more people want to be around you. And it became very clear early on that that was not just an article or a Medium piece, and certainly not a tweet, that this was not only a lifetime's worth of work, but easily a book's worth of cues. And that's what I ended up trying to teach it as in black as white as possible. I like to learn soft skills in a hard skills way. I like formulas and blueprints. And so I thought, okay, what are the 96 cues that people need to know to be more charismatic? And that is what the book is.
How long was the process? So, it's not per hour per se. And I love that idea of extroverts write these books. And because I think that happens across every medium. I think that sometimes people who naturally love exercise write exercise books and are like,
yes.
Why don't you love getting up at 3 a.m.
Yes.
like I do?
Yes.
So therefore, this is the way. And so I love your approach to that. How long was the process? Is it you have the idea and then it's, you're interacting on these topics over and over and over again. I know you've got an expertise in that, but is it multiple years? What is that process like?
Yes. Okay. So I started a little folder on my desktop 17 years ago. So 17 years ago, I started noticing what I called at the time curious cues. And that was the name of the folder on my desktop, because I started to notice 17 years ago that I was seeing patterns, that the bad guys, people who, at the time, I think it was like, Lance Armstrong was coming out as he had doped. Spoiler alert, Lance Armstrong doped. It was like the era of Amanda Knox. It was like a lot of those kinds of people were coming out. I noticed that I was seeing the same shame, guilt, fear, anger cues. And on the other side, I was seeing these curious cues, I called them at the time, of like very highly charismatic people. But it didn't matter if they were athletes or wrestlers or actors or politicians. They were the same cues over and over again. And so I started cataloging these cues in that folder 17 years ago. And every time I saw it, it could be a screenshot or a note or a sticky, I put it in that folder as a little time saving. And then I discovered in 2010, this is when it really started to ramp up, I discovered the quintessential study that is sort of the framework for the entire book, which is a groundbreaking study from Princeton University by Dr. Susan Fisk, who looked at highly charismatic people and found that highly charismatic people have a very powerful blend of warmth and competence. And that unlocked everything. So it was about a decade in the making of discovering that groundbreaking study and then beginning to catalog it into usable patterns, finding the same cues over and over again. I wrote my first book in 2015, 2016, came out in 2017. That surprised everyone and people actually liked it and bought it. I was delighted there were other awkward people in the world. And so in 2020 is when I really thought, there's something else here that I wasn't able to say in this other book. And so it was 2 years of active writing, researching, cataloging the studies, getting the citations. So 17 years of start, decade of gathering, 2 years of active writing and researching.
I love how perfectly nerdy that is, the having the folder, because I always say, like, I'm a goal nerd. I'm constantly working on goals behind the scenes that are so obscure. They might never make it into a book, but I'm just curious about something. And I love hearing that expression of your curiosity. What would you say, or like, if you had to give me some examples of Hall of Fame charisma, people in the media that other people would know, like, don't say, well, I have a mailman named Jim Smith. He's very charismatic.
But I love my mailman, Jim.
I know you do. He's fantastic. Okay. The shorts are working, Jim. They're working. But like, who would you, because I feel like we always go Bill Clinton. Like he's Like the charisma and like, even in trials, you're like, this guy, yeah, okay. And even as you're like, this is a terrible conversation we're having, but who is in the Charisma Hall of Fame in your mind?
Okay. So actually, I would love to talk about Bill Clinton a little bit because he is a quintessential charisma person. And in our research, so in 2014, I began to ask people two questions. We have a lab and we bring people in and we do all kinds of research. Again, just like you mentioned, I have these kind of goals in mind and we're doing research to figure out which one is sticky. So we asked people two questions. The first question is, who is the most charismatic person you can think of? I could tell you literally the most common answers. And Bill Clinton, Oprah Winfrey. Those are the two most common. Okay. Third choice in there, depends on the age of the person, is The Rock. Okay. The Rock
that's a good one. Yeah.
The Rock is listed on a lot of lists. So those are like the top three, like famous people. What's interesting is I think that there's a new name that's been popping up because I've been asking audiences recently. And can you guess what the new name is?
Are you going to say Elon Musk?
You know what? Okay. Bookmark Elon Musk. Because he is mentioned in a different way. No, the number one name I hear now is Ted Lasso.
Oh, duh. Of course. Fiction. I didn't know we were going into fiction. That's
neither did I.
Good call.
John, neither did I. But people are like, Ted Lasso. Like, I cannot tell you how impassioned a third of the audience gets with that name. So he's the new brand of charisma, which I love because Ted Lasso has some awkwardness to him. He's very charismatic, but he owns it. And so I call like the charisma zone is like the Oprah zone, the Ted Lasso zone. I want to mention Elon Musk because Elon Musk is off the charts in competence, right? So if you watch him speak, even if you read his tweets, he is off the charts in capability, power. He's super impressive. He knows what he's talking about. The problem is what Dr. Fisk found. So that landmark study that I mentioned that looks at highly warm and highly competent people. So the highly charismatic people hit the sweet spot. Oprah is both approachable and likable, but she knows her stuff. Right? Yeah. Bill Clinton, you want to be his best friend, but you also want him to run the country, depending on your politics, right? Ted Lasso, you want to be his best friend and have a beer with him, but you also have a deep sense of knowing that he has his inner wisdom. Okay. Those are highly charismatic people, all different flavors, but they hit that sweet spot. Elon Musk is too high in competence without enough warmth. And what Dr. Fisk found is that when you have very smart, very talented, brilliant people, which I have a feeling is the people who are listening to this podcast, they come at you with all their smarts. The biggest mistake smart people make is they put their smarts first. And what the research found is that actually our traits are chronological. We have to show warmth before competence. And if we don't, the research finds that competence without warmth leads us feeling suspicious. And that is why when you watch Mark Zuckerberg testify or you watch Elon Musk give a keynote, you were like, wow, this person is smart, but I don't know. I just don't know if I like him. That's universal.
So good.
That's universal.
So good. When it feels like it backs up, I'm going to butcher the quote, which is terrible, but the Maya Angelou, where it's like, people won't remember what you said, don't remember how you made them feel. Like that's warmth versus competence.
Okay, so that's what changed my life about this research was that it gave me relief because it made me realize that our warmth and competence is the key to people taking us seriously, remembering us, listening to our ideas, but it's contagious. So very highly charismatic people, the reason why we love to be around warm, likable, competent, smart people is because we catch it. When we see someone with highly warm cues, we ourselves become more warm. When we see someone with high competence, it makes us want to be our most competent self. And so a contagion that we have is actually our warmth and competence.
That's wild. And it's funny. I went and saw Tom Brady play for the first time before he retired, maybe like 6 months ago. And we were probably like 10 rows up behind the bench. My brother got just crazy seats from a friend. And watching him throw made me want to better my own life. Like I'm clearly not playing in the NFL, but I was like, I got to do my taxes better. Like I need to start, I need to floss more. Like just the aura was big enough for the whole stadium. Never mind. Like we had a conversation. So that's such an interesting idea that competence inspires competence, because I've also seen people who change the feel of the whole room, or they'll, people say they change the temperature of the room that aren't physically attractive. That if you said, okay, in Hollywood, it makes sense that like Bradley Cooper is charismatic. Like he has a pretty head, like his whole head is nice, whatever.
He has a really pretty head.
He's a pretty head. Good for him. Like,
agreed.
And then like Brad Pitt has a great head, whatever. But I've been in the presence of people that you wouldn't go, oh, they're beautiful or they're tall and domineering, but they still have this ability to change the whole room. Is that part of that mix of warmth and competence?
Okay. So can I deep dive into a scientific study? Can we like get very scientific for a second?
Totally. Yeah. Nerd out.
Okay.
Let's go.
All right. So this is critically important, I think, for understanding some of the miscommunications that are happening in the world right now. Here's what they did. Researchers split students up into salary committees. So salary committees are tasked with allocating a share of like profits to imaginary employees. Okay. So they're split up into 4 different groups and they're tasked with how do you want to pay people? Now, this is a very important question that people have that are dictating life choices. Okay. So in this research experiment, they have these 4 salary committees, but there was one little catch. Each group had one actor who was assigned a mood. Okay. So the first group got an actor who was told, by the way, this is the same actor, same person. The first actor was told to be in the mood of cheerful enthusiasm. The second was supposed to be, the second actor, second group, the same actor, second group was told to be serenely warm. The next group was told to be hostile and irritable. And the last one was depressed sluggishness. What they found is that one actor completely changed the decisions of the entire committee. So the cheerfully enthusiastic and the serenely warm moods, those groups got along better. They had less conflict. They cooperated more and they distributed raises more fairly. Okay. So they were more fair in their salary allocations. Whereas the, of course, hostile irritability and depressed sluggishness, this is just one person, by the way, not only made more conflict in the group, they actually changed the pay. What's crazy about this is when everyone was asked afterwards, did you notice anything about this actor? Did you notice anything about the moods? They had no idea that this actor affected anything about their decisions. And so my goal, my mission with this work is that I think if we can show up as our most warm, most charismatic, most competent selves, not only are we feeling our most charismatic selves, we are infecting people to be their warmest and charismatic selves. And that makes them make better decisions. That makes them treat people more fairly.
That's a wild study. So let's jump right to the practical then. So I'm listening to this and I think, okay, I believe it. I'm in. I want to have higher warmth, higher competence. What's something it's a Tuesday. Vanessa Van Edwards has told me these things matter. What am I doing with that? Like what's a practical thing I could do?
Okay, let's do it. Let's do an email audit. So if it's a Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever day, I want you to open up your email sent folder, okay? And I want you to pull up a recent important message. So a message that you sent, it could be personal, it could be professional, client, colleague, boss. I want you to pull it up and I want you to do an audit. So I want you to not only look at the subject, but I want you to look at the words in the body of the email, including your signature. And I want you to split up what you're counting into 2 groups. The first group is just like that serenely warm, cheerful enthusiasm. Which words in your email give you the warm and fuzzies? So I call these warm words, right? So this is open, best, both, collaborate, together, happy, friend, team. Okay. Any of those warm and fuzzy words, I'm going to count how many you use. Second, I want you to count the number of competent words you use. So competent words are like command and direct. So if warm words are warm and fuzzies, competent words are command and direct. So this is capable, power, efficient, power through, get it done, any productivity word.
ASAP.
ASAP, onwards. And for all of my emoji users, emojis count as one warm word. Exclamation points count as one warm word. For my data heads, data, percents, or charts count as competent words. I want you to count them up. This is immediately going to tell you what kind of cues you're using with others. One of 2 things will happen. Either you'll have way more of one kind of word, way warm or way competent. It's very rare to have a mixture of both, although that's the goal of the book. That's the goal what we're trying to do is get a mixture of both. Or 2, you'll have a really hard time deciphering any emotion words at all. And that's this last piece that we haven't talked about yet, which is what I call the danger zone. Oftentimes, really smart people don't know how to control their cues. And so they just under emote. They under signal. They think, okay, well, to be professional, I'm going to sterilize. I'm going to make everything as efficient as possible by taking away any kind of emotional, verbal cueing, vocal cueing, or body language cueing. And what happens is if we under cue, people end up not being able to remember what we say. And so we sterilize our emails, which makes people slower to respond to our emails. It makes us less memorable. It makes us less dopamine worthy, which we won't get too much into the chemicals. That audit, what you're doing right now, is going to tell you how you're coming across to others. My mission for you is the next 10 important emails you send, because this can't be every email, right? Every email, no, that doesn't make sense. But for the important ones, can you strike a balance of warm and fuzzies versus directing commands? So that would look like, hey team, happy Monday. I'm so excited for our meeting later today. I made sure I pulled everything together so we can get every item done on the agenda. Be sure to let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to chat through. See you at 4. That email, even though I'm only using a couple of replacement words, is setting people up for success. You are literally cueing them for warmth and competence. Our single words, especially the first 10 words we use, can change an entire interaction. Research has found that even having people read in a set of directions, another scientific study which completely blew away the way I write emails and the way that I chat and use Slack, they found that when they sprinkled in 3 or 4 achievement-oriented words. So achievement-oriented words are very charismatic, very competent, like win, like achieve, like succeed, like goal, right? The word goal.
All right. I like that.
You're on it. So when they sprinkled in 4 achievement-oriented words to a set of directions, participants did better on the subsequent math tests. Not only did they do better on the tests, they spent more time working through the problems. They enjoyed the test more, and they found they actually had a chemical change. When they measured their physiology, they produced more testosterone and dopamine. This means that you think that we throw away the couple first opening lines in a subject or the first opening word in an email, but actually those words are setting people's brains up for success.
That is wild to me, but not hard to believe, because with my last book, Soundtracks, where it talked about how
book.
important your thoughts are and how important your words are. So that makes 100% like the challenging thing for me. I would say the one I've had to work on is warmth. Because even though I'm excitable and like fun and positive, for instance, I had a team meeting where I got in and it was on Zoom and I was like, all right, let's get going. Like Pete, they were kind of chit chatting about like what they did this weekend. And I was like, all right, let's go. And I totally like very abruptly was like, okay, we have to figure this thing out. And I had a team member say later, like, I wish you showed up before your impatient showed up. And she was like, you took the air right out of that meeting. And she was right. I had to apologize the next meeting, but I really was like, I want to be efficient. Like hearing about snowboarding doesn't matter, whatever the thing was. And I ruined that meeting by having too much efficiency, too much, like focus on competence versus warmth. So take meetings, for example.
I just want to double down on that because I'm the exact same way. I also think you can add structure. So if you're a highly competent person who struggles with warmth, and I actually do think that's most people who are listening right now, and this is most common with successful professionals. So almost all of my students are high achieving professionals, and they have the exact same thing where we have an agenda. We want to get it done, right? So highly competent people have a different motive in a meeting or an interaction. We want to get it done. So we love agendas. We love tasks. We love, getting tasks, checking things off our list. Highly warm people have a slightly different goal. Neither of these are better or worse, but highly warm people are all about building rapport. So they're trying to collaborate. They're trying to communicate. They're trying to build bridges. Again, neither of those are right or wrong. But what I would do is what a competent person can do. This is what I did in my team meetings is I also used to struggle with that chit chat. And so what we've done is, we add at the very beginning of every team call, tell me something good. So at the very beginning of every team call, as people are just beginning to log in, everyone goes around very quickly and shares something good. It's usually like 1 sentence to 30 seconds. It's a way we celebrate each other. It's part of the framework. It goes by really fast, but it's still like a nice touch point. And what's amazing about it is it's changed the nature of our calls. First, just like you, I feel like we are getting things done by rapport building. So I actually get to hit both my competence, get it done, and my warmth of getting to know people. And second, my team members have told me I now look forward to the meetings more because I all week think about what's going to be my win, what's going to be my achievement oriented word that I want to share. And so before they hop on a call, instead of checking email and getting things done, they're literally mentally being like, what's good? What's good? What's my win? What's my win? What's my win? Which has changed our meetings.
Fortunately, we hired an operations person who starts our meetings with what's a personal win, what's a business win. I mentioned that because I didn't just come up with that. We brought somebody who was good at meetings, was like, hey, we need to do this. And I was like, if you say so, and it's obviously way better, but it's not my natural language. I'm curious. I'm a public speaker. There's a lot of people that have a goal of giving better speeches or maybe leading in a meeting better. What are some cues that public speakers can use to connect with the audience, create warmth from stage, share competence? How would you coach a public speaker in this concept?
Okay, so I love this example. The reason for this is because one of the research experiments we did for the book is I love the show Shark Tank. Have you ever watched that show?
Sure, very popular.
Shark Tank, entrepreneurs come and pitch a panel of sharks about their idea. We analyzed 495 Shark Tank pitches. So this was one of our most massive pieces of data. It took us about 8 months to code every single one of these pitches. And we coded the pitches for everything we could think of. So gestures, smiling, walking, verbal content, interaction, touch. We clocked the seconds laughing. We looked at the colors they wore, the genders. We looked at everything we could think of, trying to find patterns. What was the difference between the most successful pitches and the least successful pitches? And when could you tell that? What was the thing? One of the easiest things that I teach all of my students who present and pitch is this. The most successful pitchers typically use an open palm acknowledgement sometime in the first 30 seconds of their pitch. Like that, basically, we could literally predict if an entrepreneur used an open palm acknowledgement, they were more likely to get a deal. And here's how that worked. Either they would walk into the tank and the doors would open and they would give a little, hey, everyone, and hold open their hand as to greet. Or as they were gesturing, they would say, Kevin, we've been wanting to work with you. And they would open palm gesture towards Kevin. By the way, Kevin was then more likely to give them a deal if he got that open palm gesture. They often did a double open arm as if to say, I'm welcoming myself into the tank. That gesture has universal implications. It sounds really small. So if you hop on a video call, walk into a meeting, walk onto a date, walk into a room to see your family or friends, the best thing you can do is hold open your hand and say, hey, everyone, good morning, and just open up your hand. The reason for that is because universally across genders and cultures and races, we love a palm. A palm shows I'm not concealing anything. I'm not hiding anything. So instinctively we know, friend, not foe, which we really like to know about someone. And we also, as humans, selfishly, we love to be acknowledged. We like to feel like you're there for us. And so this very simple way to start when you walk on the stage, when you open up a presentation, is just an open palm gesture. It's one of the fastest ways to build charisma.
It's such a little thing, but I could totally see that having a big impact. If you were working on cues with somebody and they said, you know what, I don't feel like I'm living up to my full potential, where would cues come into that conversation? Where would you say, okay, well, let's figure out how you're cueing in conversations and relationships. If they said, okay, I want to take my cues to the next level, what would you do?
Okay. So you are not alone versus what I would tell you is you noticing that is a huge step because I think a lot of people who are missing their potential don't even realize it. They rely too heavily on their ideas. This happened to Jamie Siminoff. So this is a story I tell in the book. Jamie Siminoff is the founder of Ring, an incredibly successful doorbell company. A lot of people have Ring on their doors for their doorbell. Jamie Siminoff went into the Shark Tank with this idea and it totally bombed. He did not get offers. He walked out of the tank with nothing. The crazy thing is only a couple months later, he got investments from Shaquille O'Neal, Richard Branson, and then sold his idea for $1 billion with a B to Amazon. His idea was not enough. And he walked into the tank thinking his idea was enough. His numbers were enough, but he undersignaled. So I would say that you're in good company. A lot of the times people with really good ideas over rely on their ideas and don't think enough about their cues. So the very first thing that I would have you do is I would do your next audit. So we just talked about an email audit. The next audit I want you to do is I want you to film just your end of your next important call. So this on Zoom, if this is just you, or if you want to set up your camera, I want you to film yourself on this call. And I want you to do a very quick audit of the cues that you're currently sending. I want you to look at your facial expressions, your hand gestures. I want you to also listen to your voice tone. One of the big mistakes I see is that there's a lack of congruence. And this is what I want you to analyze in your video. If you say that you're happy to be somewhere, do you look happy to be there? Do you sound happy to be there? Do you know what I mean by this?
Oh, 100%. Because whenever a public speaker goes, I'm so excited to be here. You're like, no, you're not. You feel miserable. Not. And now I feel miserable too.
Yes, exactly. Speakers walk out on a stage and they say, I'm so happy to be here, which literally sounds like an apology. Yeah. Literally sounds like an apology. Or, and this is the next thing I want you to listen for, vocal cues. I had an entire section on the book on vocal cues. This is my favorite section to write because this is where most people give away their power. Or they ask, they use the question inflection. I cannot tell you how many speakers start their presentation and they ask their own name. So they say, hey, I'm so happy to be here. Doesn't sound happy at all. And they say, my name is Vanessa. And today I'm going to be talking about charisma. And we're going to be doing about 30 minutes together.
Yeah. It's a disclaimer.
Oh, it's a disclaimer. And so I think, and I've worked with thousands of students where I say to them, where are you missing your potential? Where do you think you're missing cues? They say, I have no idea. I have no idea. I come up confident. I did my power posing. I know everything I'm doing. And then we watch their video and in the first 30 seconds, I can see them give away all their power. And this is very, very clear. In your first 30 seconds, I want you to make sure that you're saying or stating your name or your big idea. The moment you ask your price, your big idea, your name, you're telling people, I don't really believe in myself and neither should you.
For me in speaking, I've usually just been introduced. So reintroducing myself is a waste of time and the first 30 seconds is valuable. So I always do a lean in line where I'm trying to generate a moment for you to lean in to what I'm going to say next. So when I was in college, I decided to try out for the football team. And clearly, if you visually see me, I don't look like I played football. And so you're like, wait a second. So yeah, I mean, that makes so much sense to me. I'm curious because I always love to ask the questions behind the book. I'm like, were you always ambitious? Are you one of these kids that you're like, I sold more Girl Scouts than anybody in my neighborhood, and here's what I did, and I had a chart, and I got a job filing paperwork at 12. Were you always ambitious, or was it a process over time? Because what you're doing, everything you described, the lab, multiple books, like the coaching, it's ambitious in the best way possible. Is that something you grew up with, or is it something you grew into?
It's in my bones. It's in my bones. It's in my fingernails. It's in my hair. I started a car. Yeah, I started a car. Oh, can I just tell you about my first business? This is so nuts.
Yeah, please.
So I had a car wash business at age 10. We washed every neighbor's car. Forget lemonade stands. Those didn't have high enough margins for me. I had Post-it notes for, SAT score goals. Oh yeah. So my very first business, I was about 6 and I grew up in Los Angeles, California. And my brother and I would sell lemonade and cookies on the corner because the deal was if we sold enough cookies and lemonade to buy our own tickets to Disneyland, we could go to Disneyland. Okay. So that was the rule in my house.
It's a good deal. Good deal.
Yeah. It was a great way to encourage entrepreneurship. So there's my brother and I every single day, all summer, trying to get enough money for tickets to Disneyland. And we weren't making much money, right? Like margins and we had to buy our own stock too. So it wasn't a great margin business. But then one day across the street, they were filming a movie across the street in the house. And we were kind of in the shot, like in the very, very corner of the shot. And so the producer comes over and he says, listen, you guys got to move your stand. And we're like, we didn't sell out yet. Like we're not moving. And he goes, oh, and he gives us $100 and he buys the rest of our stock. We're like,
That's a dream.
So we're like, this works. So every day for the next 3 months of the shoot, we set up a lemonade stand and made them just buy us out.
How old were you when you did this?
I was like 6 or 7, probably.
That is amazing. You got into Hollywood. You're like, Hollywood has deep pockets. We're about to get into those deep pockets.
We went to Disneyland 5 times. Yeah.
That's so great. So now, okay, currently, so it's modern day Vanessa. Fast forward. What's your morning like? I love that question because everybody that's a high performer, everybody that's into goals has a different approach to the morning. What's your morning like?
Okay, very easy. At 7:01 a.m. every morning, my daughter runs into our room. I have a 3.5-year-old, and she has one of those little clocks that turns green when it's okay to get out of bed.
It's go time.
And, 7:01. 7:01, I hear the pitter patter of feet. She storms into our room. We cuddle for about 5 minutes. We just hang out. And then I play with her in her room for about an hour. We do creative games and stories and painting sometimes and clay. And then I make her and myself breakfast, usually like a gluten-free waffle. And at 8:30, I have started my day. That's when our help comes. And then I always start my day with like my 5-bullet list and my 5-bullet not to do list. So my not to do list is just as important as my list, because if I do not stay on track, I'm in trouble. So every morning I make what should I do today? And what can I not do today? Like no matter what, I am not allowed to touch it. I'm not allowed to do it.
Can you give us an example of what something that might be on a not to do list?
Yeah. Not log into LinkedIn, no TikTok. No email. Like I have some days where I'm not allowed to check my email.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Is that because you have a bunch of focus projects you need to work on?
Exactly. And I know that I will be sucked into those things if I'll lose an hour if I have them on my list. And so if they're on my not to do list, it means I cannot get sucked into them today.
I like that a lot. So are there some that are always rotating on the not to do list? Like if you had to say, okay, John, in the last month, there's been 50 on the not to do list, or are there the same villains over and over again where it's like TikTok is never not on the not to do list? I just did like 7 negatives because I'm a writer and good at English.
You know, I've learned that if I have the same villains over and over again, I ignore them. And I also have to let my villain, like my freak flag, fly. So like I try really hard to not have repeats, because there should be a day where I can deep dive on LinkedIn and lose myself and not feel guilty. And so I actually really try to my villains should have a day on the to-do list, right? Like they've got to, or else I'm like constantly feeling guilty about them. So if I have a day where it's like a little bit late and it's a Friday and I'm like, you know what? I got all my stuff done yesterday. I feel good about myself. Today is the TikTok day. And I just let myself go crazy. It's like eating carbs because, you know, on a no carb diet, like lets you reset.
Yeah,
it's my cheat day. Yeah, exactly.
So are you using any visuals in your goal setting? So you're like, you know what? I've got a poster, I've got a chart, I've got an item. Like when you think of visual representation, because it's a cue in a sense.
Yes.
Like, are you cueing yourself visually for any of the goals you're working on?
Yes. Actually, I have an entire section on color cues in the book, because font and color cues are cues we don't think about. Like even your font choice, they've like, let's play a little, I don't know if you read this yet in the book, John's at the very end, but which is the least funny font? Just guess. They actually
Comic Sans?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Which is
it's
ironic.
Terrible. It makes me angry.
Every time I see it. Angry. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's called comic, which is so funny. So anyway, people tend to choose Comic Sans to be funny, but it's actually the least funny font. And yes, they did research that. So there are tons of cues. And my team and I, we use start, stop, continue. So this is an ongoing thing in our team. I use it myself. So I have a big whiteboard in my office, and our entire team does this, by the way. So obviously red is stop. Those are things that we cannot do right now, or we should not be doing right now, or we should stop doing. Green are things that need to be started or kickstarted. Someone needs to take the ball and run with it. And then yellow are, it's doing really well, keep going. So that's continue. And so we have 3 different columns, and we are constantly moving Post-its between the stop, start, and continue. So those are for like bigger ideas. So like my 5 bullets to do and not to do are every day. But once a week, or maybe more accurately, once a month, we're looking at our broader board of being like, what's the stop, what's the start, and what's the continue? And I find that incredibly grounding on a team, especially.
Yeah, I bet it brings everybody together and gives a common language.
And I have a YouTube video kind of tutorial on how I do this, both personally and professionally. If people want to watch it, they can go check it out too.
Perfect. I'm curious, what's your personal currency? So I loved hearing the answer that at 7:01, my daughter runs in, because I think sometimes from the outside, we see successful people, we see authors that have, you know, big YouTube channels, TED videos, and we think, okay, they must they see their child for 9 minutes every day and they feed them like a vitamin full of all the nutrients. And then they see them at the end of the day. And you're like, no, we play and here's what we do. So what's your personal currency? And I'll give you an example. Like Bill Watterson from Calvin and Hobbes, part of the reason he stopped Calvin and Hobbes was his personal currency was artistic freedom, not money. So he said they kept offering me more money and I kept asking for more artistic currency and artistic freedom. And we kept missing each other because we both held something the other one didn't care about. So for you, is it, I like a flexible schedule? Is it, I need X amount of hours to write? Is it, you know, I have big financial goals that kind of motivate me? What would you say is part of your personal currency?
Yeah, definitely. This took me way too long to realize. So thank you so much for asking it, because the more I say it, the more I remember it, which is my personal currency is autonomy over my time. If I am feeling an itch that like, I have to work on this right now, I have to film this video, or I have to write this script, or I have to write this book, that I can cancel my entire day and work on it. That if I'm like, I need daughter time, like I need to spend lots of quality time with my daughter. I miss her. I need her, or she needs me, that I can cancel my whole day and do that. That is incredibly hard in my line of work because, we're constantly collaborating. I'm collaborating with you. I'm collaborating with my publisher. I'm collaborating in all ways. And so it's very, very hard to try to keep autonomy, but keep collaborating. And I find that those are constantly my two forces that I'm battling.
That's a perfect answer. I would say freedom of schedule is the way I would say that same thing. And that's, I've had my own business for the last 9 years, and that's part of the benefit. It comes with a lot of challenges, obviously. We often talk with my wife that like we don't get a check every 2 weeks from an organization. So if your personal currency is stability, that's a big challenge to that personal currency. So I love hearing that answer. What's a goal you've quit? Like what's something that for maybe for you were like cycling was one for me. I realized I don't like bicycling. I'm a runner. Like I hate every part. Like
me too.
Any sport that you occasionally get hit by a car, to me, is a terrible sport. Like I have friends that have been hit by multiple cars. And so like that for me, I quit that one. I wish I didn't buy the expensive bike before I learned that I didn't love it, but that's often how I do things. But for you and for other people, cycling's amazing. Like this is not a criticism of cycling, but what's something you've quit where you're like, you know what, give the old college try, did this thing, and I retired it and I don't feel any shame.
Oh, and I loved your book about this, and ending, not just starting, but also ending. So I have 3 answers. I'll go through them quickly because I think they're a little different. But one is I did 5 TikToks and realized I hated myself and I felt dirty afterwards. So I stopped.
So like, were you dancing? Were they dancing to like silly TikToks?
No, like I was like trying to teach in this very like limited, whatever it was at the time, like 15 seconds. So I was trying to teach a concept in 15 seconds. And I was like, no, I'm very verbose, as everyone can hear. Like there's no way I can teach something in 30 seconds or 60 seconds. So I did 5 and they did great, by the way. They did like really well. And I was like, no, I can't do it. I can't live with myself. So quit TikTok. Second is, I have started thinking about a podcast at least 3 different times with 3 different people with 3 different ideas and 3 different partners. But every time I begin to go down the path, I quit because I realize I have mastered YouTube. If you can believe it, I put my first YouTube video up in November of 2007. So
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. And I've done a video a week since November 2007. So I have learned that network. I have mastered that network. And I realize that if I do a podcast, it will only take away from that. And I put so much time into it, it's not worth it. So I've quit 3 different podcast ideas, never to launch. Not saying I won't do it one day, but not yet. And the last one is I've quit friends. And by friends, I mean frenemies. There's been people in my life, and I think we forget to take stock of them now that we've, lived a couple of decades, where they're just like sort of friends by habit. And I realized that there was a couple people in my life I was hanging out with out of habit, and we weren't serving each other, and I didn't feel truly supported. And so it was one of the hardest decisions of my life to quit people who I didn't think we were doing well together.
I think that's a great answer. I think it's always healthy when a couple comes to that decision too, where you go, because I think couples will often go be friends with, because they think the other one likes the person. And then like when they have a moment where they're like, oh, that dinner was terrible. And the other one's like, I did that for you. And like, whoa, no, I did that for you. And then you both realize like, we both don't like them. Let's stop going to dinner with those people.
That is exactly what happened. That is exactly it. It's like so powerful. And you know what? Checking in with your partner and being like, am I a better person when I come home from hanging out with that person? Are we better? Do we look forward to this? Is it worth a babysitter? Oh man.
Yeah. You don't have a lot of tokens to play when you have a 3.5-year-old.
No.
Like you're not casually seeing a movie. Like you guys aren't going to go see the new Batman. You know what I mean? Like,
no, we're not.
You're not going to be like, we're going to get a sitter because I really want to see the new Batman. Like if you didn't have kids, maybe that'd be different. But I always think that's funny. What's interesting, I had the same experience, but reversed with YouTube. Like I tried YouTube for a year and I was like, it's not my jam. Like I respect it. I see the value. I have to push back on everybody who like, people say it's easy. That's the problem is people come up and pitch things and they go,
no way.
You should really be on YouTube. It's so easy. And like, no, doing anything well is not easy.
Thank you.
Like what you're doing on YouTube, I really respect, and it's not easy. And so I tried it for a year and I was like, no, it's not. In the same way you did the podcast, I'm like, oh, podcasting makes more sense to me. So I loved hearing those answers. So only 2 last questions, or really three last questions. The first one, does your spouse read your books during the manuscript portion of the process? And what's that like?
Oh, goodness. So I work with my husband. So I started my company by myself. It was just me. And then my husband, we grew so quickly and so fast that my husband ended up leaving his banking world and being CEO of our company.
It's a big decision.
Huge.
Yeah.
And he allowed me to just be the content creator. So he's now CEO because I was before CEO and the content creator. So he's CEO. So he has a really valued stake in the books. My husband reads at first draft. So before my editor reads it, he reads it. So I am done. He's more of a dream killer. And what I mean by that, I mean that in the best possible way. And that my husband is highly competent. And so he's like a skeptic. So he'll be like, I don't think that's true. That's not true for everyone. No way. I don't believe it. Give me another example. I cannot have him read anything until I am like done, like researched and solid. But I want him to be the first to poke holes in it before it gets to someone important.
Whole book? You're not giving him chapters? It's whole book?
Whole book.
Holy cow. Yeah, that's intense.
It's a horrible
I'm doing
week.
chapters.
It's a horrible week. I mean, we set aside a week and it's like, it's intense on our marriage, but it's really good. And this is what we do for all the projects. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was curious because the question my wife will ask me, and I laugh about this question every time I say it, is she'll say, do you want feedback or compliments? And it's such a good question because like sometimes I just wanted to be like, you're doing great, keep going. But like there's other times where I'm like, if this sounds dumb or cheesy or not helpful, or I'm pretending to be another author than who I really am, then like, please tell me that because you know me well. So that's the first question. Second question, what 4 books would you put on your Mount Rushmore? So if you had to say, you know what, other than books that I've written, if there are 4 nonfiction books, like say, let's use the loose phrase, success books, or, change your life books, what would you put on your Mount Rushmore?
So hard.
And if that's tricky, the other question I often will say it, I'll frame it this way, because sometimes without prep, people like you end up going like, I like Great Gatsby. Like you just think of the first book you see on your shelf. Yeah. The other way to frame it is, what's the book you've given away more than any of your own books?
Okay. This is a fiction book, but I read it more like nonfiction inspiration, which is The Giver by Lois Lowry.
Oh yeah, sure.
And I've gifted that book a lot, not for the fiction, but for like the meat in it. The Lean Startup, because I am constantly trying to MVP and iterate and stop perfecting it. So I use that model a lot. That's The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. My inspiration book was such a silly book, but really helped me, which is Why Men Don't Ask for Directions and Why Women Can't Read Maps. And it's the first nonfiction book I ever read about the brain and body differences between men and women. And I reference it all the time because it convinced me to be a self-help writer. Like that book, The way that it was laid out, the way that I think about men and women was literally dictated by that book. It's by Barbara and Alan Pease, and I've gifted it a lot. And I would say the last one is Linchpin by Seth Godin. Linchpin is not his most popular book, which I kind of like about it, but I think it's so brilliantly written and it's so well positioned. And what I love about that book is he's speaking directly to his audience. Like if you love that book, you love that book. It's right to them. It's like a love letter directly to people who need that message. And when I'm writing my books, I try to think about who am I writing to and who am I not writing to? That's a theme in my life is like, who is this not for and who is this for? And so with Linchpin, I know exactly who it's for. And so with my writing, it's like, this is for high achieving professionals who sometimes feel overlooked.
That is fantastic. That was a fantastic answer. You've set a very high bar for the next person. I always try to get the Mount Rushmore going. So fantastic. I've actually have a bonus question, then 2 more questions, we're done. How do you think people get over a fear of success or deal with it? Get over it feels like final. I think you're always working on things. So like, how do they deal with it?
I think it's really important. And I have a lot of students who are in this bucket. You have to know your success gremlins And what I mean by that is like, sometimes when people are trying to be successful, they show off or they're overly dramatic. Some people shut down. They shut down, they close up. Other people berate themselves and their imposter syndrome flares. And so I think it's really, really important for people to understand what are the gremlins that are, what is my reaction to trying to be successful? And is that true? So I think that like, what are you on your worst day? What are you on your best day? And what's the gremlin that you have to fight? Because I do believe that you have to fight it. Like I know what my gremlins are, and I have like, a samurai sword that comes out mentally because I know what that gremlin looks like, and he destroys my confidence. He destroys my success. And so I have to be like ready and waiting for him on important days. On my book launch day, I'm gonna be ready and waiting for that guy with a samurai sword, right?
Yeah, 100%.
We gotta be ready with like a shield and a samurai sword or a weapon of choice, because if you're prepared to fight them, you can fight them. You can fight anything. But if you let them surprise you or take you by storm, you're going to be knocking your back.
Well, and you've more than likely dealt with them for decades. So like you gave them decades of surprising you. So now you can be like, you know what? I gave you 20 years unfettered surprises. It's time for me to go, wait a second. I'm beginning to see a pattern here. I don't think this is how I want to do things. So I love that answer. Last question, super easy. Where can people find out more about you?
Oh my goodness. So you can buy cues wherever books are sold. I also read the audiobook if you like audio. And of course, my website, scienceofpeople.com, and my YouTube channel, which is Vanessa Van Edwards. If you want to check out some of my tutorials, I also do cues breakdowns of The Rock and cues breakdowns of really charismatic people if you want to kind of see cues in action. And I just want to thank you also for all of your work. I love your books. I've been a super fan forever. I think you're probably the best speaker I've ever seen live. Truly, I mean that. Yes, truly, I mean that. And so I just want to thank everyone for listening and allowing me to help.
Well, awesome. Well, I'll make sure we have all the links. This has been a blast, and I knew it was going to be. So I can't wait for the next book after this, because I know you're already probably knee deep in a research project, and you've got a folder that's filling as we speak.
It's true. It's true.
Of course it is. Of course it is, because you're curious, and that comes through, and you care about people. And you care about helping people get better, which I think it's really impossible to not see in what you write. So thank you so much for the work you do. And thanks for this conversation. This was awesome.
Oh, this is so good. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, Vanessa. Thank you so much for listening to my interview with Vanessa Van Edwards today. We'll put all the links in the show notes as always. And thank you for reviewing my podcast. The reviews you write are super encouraging. Podcasts are kind of weird because you kind of do them in a vacuum. It's not like a live event where you can hear the reaction of the audience, or even a blog where there are comments, or Twitter with responses. So a review is one of the only chances for me to hear from you and get a sense of what's working with the show. So thank you for taking the time to write those. Please make sure you subscribe or follow or whatever it is the kids are saying these days. And please write a review. And remember, all it takes is a goal.
Thanks for listening. To learn more about the All It Takes Is a Goal podcast and to get access to today's show notes and exclusive content from John Acuff, visit acuff.me/podcast. Thanks again for joining us. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the All It Takes Is a Goal podcast.